Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Drury, and I'm the Director of Communications here for the Maryland League of Conservation Voters. Welcome to this webinar. I'm joined today by our Executive Director, Kim Coble. Hi, Kim.
Hi,
We
Sean.
we really great to see you. We've released the annual environmental scorecard. It is now on mdlcv.org if folks want to look at it. We call it a guide to inform Maryland's environmental voters. So can you talk, Kim, a little bit about what goes into creating the scorecard and what we were trying to accomplish through the scorecard this year?
Thank you, Sean. I'm happy to chat about that. Maryland LCV has produced a scorecard for several decades now. And the intent here is to help us hold legislators accountable. And what we do is we track and score their votes on key priority bills. And in this case, we also included their votes on key amendments. So every legislator receives a score of somewhere between 0 and 100% if they have voted as we have indicated that they should vote and what is a pro-environmental vote. And really the purpose of this scorecard is to ensure that voters are well informed about how their representatives are voting on key environmental priorities.
So, I mean, we're obviously tracking all the votes and legislators' actions throughout the session. And can you elaborate on how we do this and work on these votes and track them during during the General Assembly and while they're in session?
Yeah. Well, as everybody knows, there's thousands of bills that are introduced each year. We try to focus in on those that we believe are important to environmental health and democracy. And we, along with our partners, identify bills that are of top priority. And every week we submit to the General Assembly a list of bills that are being considered for that week and that we consider top priority bills and how they should vote on them. And this document really serves as our communication with the General Assembly about exactly what we're looking for. And it's a really important piece of communication between us and them each week. And so we do that every week. We say, here are the top priority bills that are being heard. Here's how we want you to vote. At the end of session, all the votes are done, everything's tallied up. We look at the bills that we communicated about and try to choose those that were of most significance to us, to our partners, and the outcomes that happened during the session. And we will then score them. We will look at how a legislator voted on each of those top priority bills. And we create a summary. And, here's Senator um, Coble said or voted X percentage in the right direction. And if it's a low percentage, that means not many votes were in a good pro environment way. If it's a higher percentage, they voted exactly how we wanted them to throughout the session. So this year we scored 7 votes in the Senate and 8 in the House of Delegate. And what's different about this year is we also scored some amendment votes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But overall, that's what we scored. And the other thing that's important to note is that before we publish the scores and put them in the scorecard, we are in communication with both the Speaker and the President's office to ensure that we are scoring things correctly. That if there was a legislator who did not vote for a bill. It's not that they voted for or against. They simply were not recorded to have a vote. We work with the presiding officers to ensure that we are scoring that correctly for that situation. Maybe there was an excused absence, for example. So work really closely with them to make sure that we've got it correct.
Right now, voting sounds pretty straightforward. You vote for it or you don't, or you cast a vote or you don't vote at all, except it isn't as cut and dry as it would seem. So can you talk about how scoring each vote and scoring individual legislators has changed over the last several years?
Yeah, yeah, it is not straightforward, and it's a little. back and forth, frankly, every year. It's evolved over the years and it keeps changing as we try to get an accurate read on what is happening in the General Assembly. So a few years ago, I believe it was the 2024 scorecard, we had a page where we drew attention to the unfinished business. Because what the General Assembly will do sometimes is rather than vote on something, they quote, put it in the drawer. And it's been, we refer to it as a drawer report, where they actually will not bring a bill up for a vote. And so the bill doesn't advance. And in many ways, it's a way to kill the bill without having the accountability of a vote. So we, as I said, in 2024 had a chart in there that talked about that and showed on a number of bills the lack of progress, lack of advancement of a bill. So that's one thing that we've been trying to get a handle on. Another change we made was to score the chamber itself. So did things get through the Senate? Did things get through the House? We break it down into issues: land, water, energy, climate, democracy. How did the chambers do overall? We've given letter grades and we've given thumbs up, thumbs down, but to give, again, the voter a sense of what the chambers are doing as an entity itself. And then the third thing to bring their attention is that in the last 2 years, we've run up against an action that the presiding officers have done, which is to take a number of really important policy initiatives and compress them into one bill. And so last year it was the Next Generation Energy Act, and this year it was the Utility Relief Act. And this year the Utility Relief Act had portions of 18 different bills, and it got compressed into one. So we come up and it's time to score the vote. Did they vote for Utility Relief Act or not? And it's one score, one vote. And that really is not giving the voter a sense of what their legislator's doing on environmental votes. This is why we felt it was important to include amendments. There was, just as a backdrop, amendments are offered in committee, in subcommittee, on the floor, and they are a way of either changing the makeup of a bill, what's in it, what's not in it, or in some cases, changing a policy. On the Utility Relief Act this year, there were a number of amendments that were offered on the floor of the chambers, and they were harmful policy initiatives. It was things you can see in our scorecard where it's a rollback of electric school bus funding or a rollback of offshore wind. And those are policies that were just really harmful to the environment. And we felt that we needed to score those amendments. So it is one way to dig in a little deeper into the Utility Relief Act than just simply the one vote. I will say that having this one big bill approach that was done last year, and last year we didn't even offer individual scores of legislators because there was not, we didn't feel they were indicative of really the actions that happened. This year we did offer individual scores, and we're hopeful that practice of one big bill it doesn't proceed forward. They don't use that approach in 2027 because we believe transparency is really important. We believe constituent input and conversations about bills is really important, and deliberative, thoughtful dialogue about policies are really important. And when you combine all these initiatives into one big bill, we lose on transparency, we lose on input, and we definitely lose on thoughtful considerations for policy movement. So we're kind of hoping that does not happen again in 2027.
Great. Thanks for that detailed explanation. It is way more complicated than it seems. So
Yeah.
when it comes to the scorecard itself, there's a number of different ways we could have baked that cake, as it were. Um, can you talk a little bit about why we decided to go the way we did, and if now would be a good time maybe to bring up the scorecard?
Yeah. So the as I said, that the purpose of the scorecard is to be able to inform voters and about how their elected representatives are voting. And this is a form of accountability. Are they voting pro environment or the way you as a voter want them to vote? And so in doing so, that's where those individual scores become really important. We felt this year was important to report those because it was an election year. It is an election year, excuse me. And we thought it was important because we want good conservation officials to be elected, and we giving that information to voters was really critical. The one thing about Maryland LCV's work here is that it's a cycle. We work to get good conservation officials elected. We endorse them. We work in their campaigns. Once they're elected, we work with them to pass good policies. We hold them accountable, and then again, it's an election cycle, and so that we work on elections, we endorse them, we try to get them elected, and that cycle becomes very important, and one side is dependent on the other. And that's where the scorecard really becomes an important tool. All 4 years, even though it's not an election year, you can still hold your elected official accountable. And it's been a really effective tool over the years.
Great. And we have the scorecard on this screen now, so folks can take a look at this, and this is available at mdlcv.org. We're looking right now at the Senate. Obviously, the House is on subsequent pages, and we're looking at the bills. And as you mentioned, Kim, we break them into some priorities. Climate and energy is a big one, of course. And this year, being an election year, democracy was a big issue. And we also had some land and water votes that came up. So getting to the kind of point that you were talking about earlier, and you were alluding to how the General Assembly has changed how they vote on legislation over the years. We really see that on HB 5032, which on our scorecard, even though it's one bill, it has four different votes in the Senate, and I believe there's five in the House. I'm going to double check me on that. So the Utility Relief Act was a signature legislation, and we scored, as we see, we scored votes on that bill, and as you mentioned, it composed parts of 18 other bills, and we scored the votes on the amendments within that larger bill, as you referenced earlier. Can you explain the thinking there, and maybe a little bit about the amendment process when it's in a big piece of legislation like that?
Sure. As you said, 1532, House Bill 1532 was the Utility Relief Act. This is the one that comprised lots and lots and lots of initiatives in it. And when it first was introduced, I should mention that it was not uh, really an environmental bill, but we worked with the presiding officers, the General Assembly, and the administration to get some good environmental components into that bill. So we, in the end, felt good about that bill, and we thought we should score that. We were, um, if you look at the Second Amendment, and called End Empower Amendment. So the one part of the Utility Relief Act that we continue to struggle with, and us and our partners, was the General Assembly decided to ease up on the Empower program, which is a program to help lower income, middle income households with become more energy efficient. It's a great program. It's a way to save energy. We thought it was an awesome opportunity to address affordability in an effective pro environment way. Uh, the bill eased up on that program. We weren't very happy with that, but we didn't get that changed. However, then the vote comes up on the floor, and what there's somebody that offers an amendment to actually take out to end the Empower program completely. And fortunately, and you have to understand the dynamics. That this is everybody's in the chamber. lot of discussions back and forth, and it happens in real time. We're watching these votes happen, and can't believe somebody would offer this amendment. So fortunately, the General Assembly, in this case, the House, resisted that amendment. It did not pass, which was the right environmental vote. There was an amendment to withdraw Maryland from the RGGI program, which is the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative. It again is a good environmental program. That was resisted. So we were very pleased with that. Moving to the right, once the vote to completely eliminate the Empowered program was defeated, then there was some proposals to weaken it further. Those were resisted, and then there was an amendment to end the offshore wind program in Maryland. And while it is stymied because of federal actions, Maryland is really invested in offshore wind and believes it's a good way to produce energy in Maryland. So we did not want that amendment, and that was resisted. So these were really harmful amendments, and they were offered in the last minutes of this bill, and we were pleased that they did not move forward. But we felt they were important enough to score.
So, Kim, now you gave a really elegant explanation of what we often refer to as the sausage making process, and that was how it works in the day to day and with our team working with the legislators. So I appreciate that. Uh, do want to mention a couple of pieces of legislation. 1532, the Utility Relief Act, obviously was kind of the centerpiece of legislation this year. We also want to mention that in an election year, very important Voting Rights Act legislation passed, and some land and water issues. There was important legislation on enhancing the bay. What do those pieces of legislation mean for the everyday Marylanders?
Well, I think in all cases, they help ensure a Maryland that's accessible and emphasizing the importance of democracy in this state, the importance of voting in this state. And I think we're going to talk about that in a moment. And also the Chesapeake Bay is critical, and we were really pleased that those bills to advance voting rights in Maryland, to secure them, were protected, as well as protecting the Chesapeake Bay. So key votes, key initiatives to really continue to make Maryland a great state to live in.
Okay, we would be remiss if we didn't mention, and as I'm bringing this up, someone brought it up in the comment section, so I didn't quite see who had that question. They have perfect timing. We had some initiatives that we worked really hard on that did not pass or did not come to a vote. I'm referring, of course, to the Transportation and Climate Alignment Act, otherwise known as the TCA, and of course the Cherish Act. Can you talk a little bit about those and how they were scored?
Well, as you can see, the Transportation Climate Alignment Act was scored. It did not pass in the Senate, so it passed the House, but it didn't pass the Senate, and which was difficult and frustrating because there was a lot of support for the bill and for the initiative. It's a good environmental bill. Um, and we're hoping there's another opportunity next year to really make some advancement on that bill. The Cherish Act is a you will not see that because it was not neither the House nor the Senate voted on it. It was we've talked about it in our other webinars, but just to refresh your memory, it was a bill dealing with cumulative impact. So communities that are overburdened by pollution, that live next to, factory smokestack 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And right now, MDE cannot consider the impact of all of those at once. They have to deal with each individual permit without, as if it was a sole source, as if there were no other smokestacks or pollution sources. And they want to look at this cumulative impacts they feel as if without distinct permission from the General Assembly, they will end up in court. And so we were trying to give them distinct permission. We had great support from the speaker, from the president, from the governor. We had funding. And in the end, we had resistance from industry, but we also kind of ran out of time, and there just wasn't enough. Um, yeah, there just wasn't enough time to pull it all together. So all interested parties were happy with it. So hopefully, and my expectation is that we'll see progress again. We'll see progress next year because we had so much momentum this year, but we did not score it because there was not a vote.
Great. Now I see Destry. I hope that answers your question. If not, please message us and let us know how we can expand that. I also encourage you folks, Destry and everyone else, to take a look at the scorecard. We have very detailed explanations about all of our priorities and not just the ones we've mentioned here. So with that, let's shift gears a bit. On Tuesday, we had a primary election, and as folks may have guessed, given our name is Maryland League of Conservation Voters, we were watching the results very closely. And Maryland LCV endorsed dozens of candidates, and we were quite frankly thrilled to say that 98% of those candidates won their races. And within that group, we had a number of endorsees with a voting score of 100 on the scorecard that we just looked at, and that 100 was for this year. And those candidates won 99% of their races. So, Kim, can you talk about why that's so important?
Well, it's a great, I mean, the illustration between the election and the scorecard is ever present right here, right? We track, we hold them accountable. If they're good conservation voters, we endorse them, and then we work to get them elected. And so to have such high percentage of our endorsed candidates elected is great. To have our 100%ers to get reelected is even greater. And so the election results were very good for conservation voters, and we're really pleased with that. Um, and and again, that cycle that we work on, which is elections and then scorecard accountability, is ever present today.
Great. Thanks so much. We're proud of the results and congratulate our endorsees. We do want to point out, though, that dozens of the races were uncompetitive. They either had token opposition or no opposition at all. And even more disappointing is that the for an election year, which only happens once every 4 years, at the legislative level, the turnout was less than 17%. So, Kim, can you comment on that a little bit about the turnout and the lack of competition?
Yeah, it's this is a statement about democracy, frankly. And for those of you that have heard us speak over the years, we often say that the best way to protect the environment, the best way to fight climate change, the best way to have a saved bay is to vote. And again, the scorecard gives you a great example of that. And so people need to vote in order to have the outcomes that protect our environment, that protect our communities, that protect our democracy. And 17% is way low, especially for a state like Maryland. And we need to encourage our neighbors, our friends, our family, ourselves to show up and to be part of this process in a much more engaged manner. So we're really hoping that as we get to a general election, there'll be a better turnout than there was in the primary. To have the number of uncontested elected officials, it's a good and I mean it's a good thing because these are elected officials that we are scoring high, that are great environmental voters. We want them in office, so that part is good. From a democracy standpoint, competition is good, and we see this at the federal level in particular, where if we're detracting from competition, we're losing a lot of middle ground and discussion and debate. We hope that that will continue to be part of our system in a way that we haven't seen recently.
Great. Thanks for expanding on that. And it leads to, quite frankly, a lot of the polarization that we're seeing when we have choices at one end or end of the other.
Right.
So now, moving on, we're going to turn now to the general election, which we're very excited about, and we're going to do everything we can to make sure that 17% turnout goes up. We have three of our endorsees who were successful on Tuesday night: Matt Johnston in District 30B, Chuck Cook in District 33B, and Josh Hastings in District 38B. They will be challenging incumbents, and we want to highlight their efforts and all the efforts of our endorsees. So, can we talk a little bit now, as we get near the end here, about why the
Yep.
general election and these races in particular are so important?
Yeah, these are really important, and look forward to working with everyone on them. We've endorsed Matt and Chuck and Josh because they're strong environmental voters. They're good conservation minded folks. They're accessible. They're responsive. These are all things that make a good legislator. So we're supporting them in a big way. The people they will be running against, the incumbents, scored 25% on our scorecard in 2026, and their lifetime is somewhere between 25 and 52. So they're low conservation voters. We want to replace them with strong conservation voters, elected officials. And so, really hoping for your support in those districts and for our work as well.
Great. Kim, before we sign off today, anything else you want to add?
Just want to make the point that when we were talking about the scorecard and the cherish, while we didn't score that independently, we do discuss it in the scorecard where there's a
Yes.
section on that and on the Voting Rights Act and everything. So there's a great narrative that accompanies the chart that we showed you. So be sure to, you can download it, you can pull it up online from our website.
Great. Thanks so much, Kim. Folks, I want to thank you all for joining us. I want to encourage you to visit us on our LinkedIn, on our Facebook, and on our Instagram. We're very active there. Message us there, please. I want to also let you know we're going to have an upcoming conservation conversation on July 15th. And I also, before we go, I look at the calendar and I wanted to wish everyone a happy Independence Day. Celebrate safely, please. We'll see you again soon. Thanks, Kim. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.